Growing up, I always pictured myself living quietly in our family home with my mom. However, that vision shattered unexpectedly when my husband, Scott, announced that he would be taking on the responsibility for all our household expenses and that it was time for my mother to move out. His blunt declaration left me stunned and deeply confused about the sudden turn of events. The reasons behind their decision became painfully clear only later when I discovered that my mother-in-law had changed the contractor's name on the condominium documents. My name is Laura, and at 35, my life is anything but slow. I was named by my father, who owned a small-town workshop. He chose Laura because I was born during that season, a name that might sound ordinary but holds immense significance for me as it carries the love of my late father. His craftsmanship was well known, and even during difficult times, I have fond memories of playing in his workshop as a child. Unfortunately, the workshop struggled financially, leading to my father's untimely death in the very place he loved during my elementary school years. To protect me, my mother and I moved away to start anew, quietly. The years of hardship weighed heavily on my mother, and she passed away during my high school years. Despite the overwhelming grief, I found the strength to forge ahead, fueled by a passion to honor my father's legacy and showcase his skills to future generations. With the help of a scholarship and countless part-time jobs, I managed to graduate from high school and pursue engineering at the local public university. During my university years, I met Scott, a supportive and kind young man who not only appreciated my skills but also respected my background, never undermining me for being a woman. His support was a cornerstone in my life, especially during busy workdays, as we lived together and shared household responsibilities. At 26, with Scott's encouragement, I began to dream again about reviving my father's workshop. Scott was fully supportive of this dream, and we often discussed marriage, knowing it could be a part of our future. Yet, my main focus remained on restoring the workshop to its former glory. Scott respected my wishes and patiently helped raise funds, even supporting my decision to use crowdfunding as a means to leverage my unique position as a female engineer in a male-dominated field. Incorporating the unique narrative of my life into the marketing strategy, I aligned the campaign with the growing societal movement that supports empowering women. With meticulous planning and persistence in securing both funding and the right team, after 4 years of dedicated effort, I successfully revived the Old Town Workshop. Learning from past financial hardships, I infused the workshop with cutting-edge technology and gave it a modern, sophisticated makeover. By establishing facilities and systems that supported women's needs, I aim to foster a productive and welcoming environment for female workers. These initiatives swiftly propelled the workshop to a premier status within the industry. While some might attribute my success to mere luck, it was the culmination of overcoming numerous challenges through relentless hard work. Scott, my partner from university, knew the reality of my struggles better than anyone. However, as my career advanced, Scott faced stagnation in his professional life. While his colleagues moved up the ranks, he remained in lower-level positions, which led to growing frustration on his part. His dissatisfaction became apparent when he coldly remarked on my success, suggesting that perhaps I deserved someone better than him. Despite his doubts, I assured him repeatedly that my achievements were made possible by his steadfast support, which I genuinely believed was crucial to my success. To express my deep gratitude and love, and to reaffirm his invaluable role in my life, I proposed to Scott. I cherished his kind and warm-hearted nature, which brought joy and comfort to my daily life. Despite my contentment in his company, I noticed a change in his demeanor over the decade we had grown from young adults to where we were now. Hoping to alleviate his insecurities, I believed that marriage might reassure him. Eager to share our decision, we quickly arranged to inform our families. Contrary to what I had anticipated, Scott's family home was a dilapidated wooden structure, raising concerns about its safety. Upon meeting me, Scott's mother remarked, "You're the daughter of that wealthy business owner they often talk about," referring to my past fundraising efforts and public visibility. Although I had always stressed the importance of making a good first impression, the reality of Scott's family's background contrasted sharply with my expectations. I had devoted considerable effort to my attire and overall appearance, aiming to strike the right note. However, to my mother-in-law, my efforts might have seemed overly flashy or extravagant. She spoke with a hint of sarcasm, implying that my polished appearance was thanks to Scott's support. Despite feeling a mix of gratitude and awkwardness, I sensed an underlying tension as I stepped into their modest home, while Scott seemed preoccupied with his thoughts. Scott remained silent, his demeanor shadowed by the worn and tattered clothes he wore, mirroring the strained atmosphere of their modest home. His father, in a voice tinged with resignation, apologized for the state of their house, acknowledging its dilapidated condition and hinting that it was a far cry from the homes of the affluent. Trying to ease the tension, I took deep breaths internally, attempting to maintain composure with each casual remark I made. However, Scott's parents' responses often highlighted the divide they felt existed between the wealthy and common people like us, making any real conversation challenging. Back at our own home, I sought to understand Scott's upbringing and his parents' perspective on wealth. He revealed to me that since his childhood, he was taught to view luxury apartments and affluent lifestyles with suspicion, often associated with unethical behaviors and a lack of empathy for the struggles of others. He was even discouraged from befriending children from wealthy families. Although I hadn't grown up wealthy myself, it was insightful to see the deep-seated roots of his parents' views. Despite Scott's explanations, his parents continued to disapprove of our relationship. His mother frequently voiced concerns that I was making Scott shoulder too much responsibility, while his father subtly warned him not to let our marriage be dominated by my influence. These expressions of disapproval seemed to erode Scott's self-esteem further. Behind my successful career was a drive to honor my late father's legacy, not a desire to overshadow others or exploit them, a point Scott had tried to convey to his parents, but my social visibility had already left a profound and somewhat skewed impression on them. I made several attempts to bridge the gap, communicating openly and trying to empathize with their viewpoint. Despite my efforts and goodwill, Scott's father remained skeptical, accusing me of thinking like how rich people think, which gradually hardened my heart towards them. Meanwhile, Scott's visits to his family became more frequent as his father's health declined, creating a growing distance between us, even though we were married and living under the same roof. 3 years into this strained phase of our marriage, Scott abruptly announced his decision to quit his job, citing the need to handle more at home. This unilateral decision infuriated me, especially since it was made without any discussion. Our relationship had devolved into a mere formality, lacking in depth and genuine communication. Although Scott claimed to be preoccupied with household tasks, I soon learned that his time was frequently spent at casinos and racetracks, further straining the fragile threads holding our relationship together. When I confronted Scott about his recent behaviors, he casually suggested that we hire a professional housekeeper, claiming that he wasn't my servant and reminding me that we had the financial means to afford it. His dismissive tone left me stunned and unable to find the words to respond. During this period, Scott's father's health rapidly declined, and he passed away 3 months later. Shortly after, while visiting my house, Scott made an unexpected announcement that he planned to live there with his mother, just the two of them. His abrupt declaration left me speechless. Continuing, Scott stated he would handle the monthly rent and demanded that I move out. Shocked by his demand, I could only manage to ask if he was truly capable of covering the rent. Instead of a clear answer, my mother-in-law interjected angrily, accusing me of belittling them. Scott, clearly frustrated, sighed heavily and asserted that he was done being dictated to and intended to live life on his terms. Their intense demeanor took me by surprise, and I found myself momentarily at a loss for words. Reflecting on their past actions and attitudes, I realized that dealing with them was going to be exceptionally difficult. I responded calmly, stating that I understood and would vacate the house the following month. However, my mother-in-law, not satisfied, pressed for an even earlier departure, rudely suggesting that I leave the next week as she was ready to start her new life and had already arranged for her belongings to be moved. Her sudden urgency puzzled me, especially since I had just agreed to leave, making it hard to grasp her logic or motivations. When I hesitated, she raised her voice even more, challenging me. "Someone as wealthy as you should move immediately to make room for professionals, right?" She repeated the remark sarcastically, indicating her view of the wealthy as being somehow special or different. Initially, I had thought it would be appropriate for them to find a new place, considering I was the one who had arranged for the house. Yet my mother-in-law aggressively insisted, "This house belongs to Scott, and no matter how much you earn, I won't let you forget that." Behind her forceful words, I sensed a message that my higher income should not make me feel superior to Scott. Observing Scott's smug and gloating expression, I found myself questioning why I had invested so much effort into this relationship in such an unbearable situation where cohabitation had become intolerable. Realizing that I could no longer share the same space and breathe the same air as Scott and his mother, I decided it was time to seriously contemplate a divorce. I planned to handle all the necessary moving arrangements and document changes over the upcoming weekend. When I softly confirmed my intentions, Scott and his mother exchanged smirks, their expressions triumphant as if they had won a long battle. I immediately started looking for apartment vacancies and reliable moving companies, even amidst my busy schedule that included work-related business trips. Upon returning home one day, I found Scott sound asleep, seemingly oblivious to my presence. That weekend, he signed the divorce papers calmly, without a hint of emotion, while his mother busied herself with the real estate agent, signing the rental agreement for the house. I was particularly concerned about whether she fully comprehended the high annual rent of $75,000. After completing all the necessary procedures, I found myself walking alone towards my new place, leaving the high-rise condo behind. The new apartment, a secure one-bedroom, was ideal for living alone. During the move, I decided to let go of many unnecessary items, which helped clear both my home and my mind, setting the stage for a fresh start. Decorating the new space was an enjoyable endeavor that helped me immerse myself gradually into my new lifestyle. As I settled in, thoughts of Scott and his family began to fade, although I couldn't completely erase them from my mind. Reflecting on the memories and the challenging times Scott and I had overcome together, I never imagined our relationship would end this way, especially recalling our university days when we had supported each other through financial hardships. The strain that developed over time was profound and immeasurable. However, later revelations added another layer of disbelief. I coincidentally reunited with a university friend who shared rumors of Scott frequenting city clubs, and a former neighbor mentioned seeing my ex-mother-in-law frequently stepping in and out of a luxury foreign car, dressed in lavish fur clothes, a stark contrast to their previous demeanor. Hearing about their new extravagant lifestyle, it was hard to believe these were the same people who once scorned the wealthy. Witnessing their transformation from afar, I saw how dramatically they had changed after I had distanced myself from that life. 3 months after our separation, I was startled by an unexpected call from Scott. His voice was tinged with a desperation I hadn't heard before, and it piqued my curiosity, especially given the way our relationship had ended. "We've gotten ourselves into some trouble," Scott explained, his tone urgent. He then shared a bewildering story that began 4 months earlier with an astonishing phone call from his mother. "I hit the jackpot in the lottery. Can you believe it? $50 million, she had exclaimed. She'd been buying lottery tickets for years, and this time she believed she had won a fortune beyond her wildest dreams. "Is this true or just a joke?" Scott had asked her to confirm. After repeatedly checking the numbers, his ex-mother-in-law assured him there was no mistake. "We're unbelievably rich now. We can finally show those upper-class people," she had declared with elation, her spirits high. Moved by these words and perhaps blinded by the excitement, Scott and his mother felt liberated from their past constraints, including their disdain toward me. "With this stroke of luck, you can escape from that woman's clutches," she told Scott, adding insultingly that she heard I was frolicking around with some young guy now. Such comments only fueled Scott's long-held frustrations and bitterness. "Now that we're wealthy, I won't be controlled by her. We want nothing more to do with her," Scott had declared to me, his voice shaking, as he informed me of our final disconnection. It seemed they had formed a common goal: to sever all ties with me and start a new, lavish lifestyle. Emboldened by their newfound wealth, they moved into a luxury downtown condo and began spending extravagantly. Scott used his savings without hesitation, and his mother spent her late husband's inheritance freely. Excited by their fortune, they went to the nearest bank to cash in the lottery ticket. However, at the bank, they encountered a shocking truth. The lottery ticket they had was from the previous year. Disbelief and dismay washed over their faces as they realized the ex-mother-in-law had mistakenly compared last year's lottery ticket with this year's winning numbers. Amidst this chaos, Scott confided that there was a deep-seated fear that somehow I would take their newfound wealth, even though it was all a misunderstanding. Surprised and somewhat bemused by their folly and the dramatic turn of events, I listened to Scott's recount of their tale, a mix of disbelief and irony coloring my response. Struggling to find the right words, I finally managed to express my sympathy. "That's truly unfortunate and sad," I told Scott. Just as I was about to end the call, he spoke up again, surprisingly asking about alimony rights. He continued, baselessly claiming that I had been unfaithful, which, he argued, entitled him to alimony. Explaining his situation further, Scott mentioned feeling stressed about the house and insisted he had the right to demand alimony. However, I vividly remember that Scott had quit his job voluntarily. My emotions flared and I couldn't hold back my response. "I can't believe you would say such a thing. Are you serious, Scott?" I found myself raising my voice, my usual calm and resilience slipping. Perhaps sensing my anger, Scott seemed surprised and confused. "It's me who should be seeking alimony. You only think about yourself, always pushing that narrative about wanting to be rich. I've heard it so many times. And your mother, why does she always complain?" I couldn't contain my frustration any longer, and my words came out in a heated rush. After my outburst, there was a moment of silence. I felt a sudden clarity and hung up the phone. Their mistake with the lottery ticket was astounding, but now it was no longer my concern. Whatever fate they met was irrelevant to me. Days later, as I walked in front of my factory, I encountered my ex-mother-in-law in a visibly poor state. She approached me begging for help. "Please, we can't afford to return the $75,000. Please come back and be a part of our family again," she pleaded. She lamented their failure to review the documents properly and their lack of seriousness about the consequences, including the mix-up with the lottery ticket. I listened quietly, choosing my words carefully. "Will you really abandon a mother and child struck by such misfortune?" she asked. After a pause, I shook my head calmly and replied, I believe that luck, in many cases, is something you forge for yourself. Despite hardships, I have strived to carve out my destiny. How much of that mindset did you ever adopt? My words left her stunned, reflecting the sharp contrast between our perspectives on responsibility and making one's way in life. As I walked past my ex-mother-in-law, her face showed a mix of confusion and regret. Unable to find the right words to respond to her plea, I continued towards the building. After a few steps, I glanced back to see her still standing there, but I never looked back again. I focused solely on the path ahead, determined to move forward. As time passed, the inevitable happened. Scott and his mother were evicted from the luxury condo. With no savings left, they moved into an old wooden shack, a stark contrast to their brief stint in luxury. Now, they spend their days working various part-time jobs, trying to make ends meet and slowly save for the future. Meanwhile, I poured my energy into my work. My factory, once a small-town establishment, grew significantly. I was able to secure funds to purchase a larger plot of land nearby and establish a new state-of-the-art factory there. This new facility was built with the comfort and well-being of the entire workforce in mind, featuring amenities like maternity leave and childcare facilities for employees. Though my parents were not there to witness this success in person, every time I saw a smiling couple with their children visiting the factory, I was reminded of my childhood. These moments filled me with a deep sense of relief and happiness, seeing the families enjoy the environment I had created, a stark reminder of the full circle my life had taken, from the hardships of my youth to the successes of my adulthood.